Well, I think my experience is really different than the typical American experience because I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Pakistan. My parents are missionaries. So, I mean, obviously technology was progressing at a very different rate than it was here. Like, I mean, if you thought dial-up internet here was bad, you should try it in Pakistan. I mean, that's not to say that they didn't have technology or that it wasn't a part of life there. It was just a very different, approach to it, I guess. I ended up going to a boarding school in Pakistan, which had 75 students total, something like that. We're talking really tiny. But there are a fair number of American students, a number of German students, Korean students, Canadian students, a few Pakistani natives, some people from Finland, Ireland, the UK, New Zealand, Australia.
Holy cow, you had like a whole little mini UN over there, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and that was really fun and exciting. And I mean, because it was such a small school, we generally had one, maybe two extracurricular activities. One would be like a sports thing, and one would be like an artsy type thing, and basically everybody would be involved in everything.
Right.
But I'd say generally I would fall towards being more extroverted. I tend to love being around people. I love getting to know people.
Technology was definitely on the more restrictive side as I grew up, but I was homeschooled. We lived on an acre in Michigan that sort of had a nice woodlot out back, maybe the size of Commons Lawn. So we spent a lot of time outside, running around the woods, building forts. Never really felt a strong draw to entertain myself with technology.
And how long were you homeschooled for?
All the way through high school.
Huh. Wow, it seems like there's a lot of homeschoolers here.
Really? I've run into very few.
Yeah, or maybe it's just people I talk to. I don't know.
Or maybe I just don't talk to people.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Like on the introvert, extrovert?
Introvert.
Oh, like introverted without a doubt. Did you get to interact with many kids your age as you were growing up?
Yeah, we were part of a 4-H club, and that was, I think, 4 or 5 other homeschool families. So there was that network, and then church, which incidentally I hated growing up because there were public schoolers there. And
wait, you hated it because there were public schoolers there?
Yeah.
Why?
So, homeschoolers sort of have this reputation for sort of being nerdy, awkward. I hate stereotypes, but that one's definitely true. So, in a given conversation with someone my age, there would just be a lot of stuff, like pop culture stuff or whatever, that I would just not understand at all. So I just felt uncomfortable initiating any sort of interaction with, because I figured oh, well, they're just gonna start talking about SpongeBob SquarePants and I'm not gonna have anything to say at all.
So what did you talk about the most, in the boarding school?
Yeah, we would talk about faith a lot. And I think part of that was because we had so many things going on that were faith related, So we had chapel services every Friday, and Bible classes, and we had church every Sunday. And we had devotionals with our boarding group once a week, and youth group every week that was entirely student-led. And I think that was a huge part of it, because students were really taking ownership of a lot of the faith formation that they were undergoing.
So my parents divorced when I was, 1.5, I think. My dad, he owns his own construction company, so he agreed to build my mom's house for free if she would agree to live within 20 minutes of him to make it easier on my sister and I in terms of transport.
And so it's just the two of you biologically, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
she's a little older. Yep. So this is how my week went. Sunday night was mom's house, all of Monday mom's house, Tuesday dad's house, Wednesday mom's house, Thursday dad's house, and Friday and Saturday were every other.
Ooh.
So I was back and forth all the time. Every day until freshman year of college. Every day from my first memories until freshman year of college. Yep, so my sister and I, we were always together. We were either both at mom's house or both at dad's house, but we were always together. So I think she was the one source of constancy that I had day after day after day. And I think that without my sister, I had nothing growing up because wherever I was, she was always there, always. And so I'm very dependent on my sister now because of that. And I think I always will be.
So did you live in the same house throughout growing up?
Yep. My parents are still there, small little blue house in Akron, Ohio, AK Rowdy, as we call it.
Right.
So there are 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom in that house, so there's 1 bathroom for 6 of us. So I always love to say, someone's on the toilet pooping, someone's in the shower, someone's brushing their teeth, and someone's doing their hair, You
cannot be too shy in that house.
No, or modest, but I was pretty outgoing, pretty extroverted from a young age. I love playing out in the neighborhood. Now, though, it's like totally unsafe. There's like 3 drug houses on my parents' street, a
Eek.
crystal meth lab. But anyway, in the late 80s, there were lots of families on that street. And we'd play outside till like 10 or 11 at night. We'd play tag, we'd play hide and seek, we'd play kick
Wait a
the
minute,
can.
10 or 11 at night?
In the summer. So
oh,
yeah,
oh.
just the neighbors, and a lot of us around the same age range. And we'd be playing outside, and we'd even play like drive-through. So we'd use like our upstairs bedroom window, and we'd lower stuff out the window with like rope and garbage bags. And we had walkie-talkies, and we had fake food, like Little Tikes fake food. And we'd just like lower stuff out the window. Kids would circle around the house, one window to the next, and we'd just throw down food.
And kids would just circle around and take it?
Yeah,
Yeah. So were you helming that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Was that your idea, I'm guessing?
And yeah, you know, playing school, I'd always play the teacher. I was the oldest in my family, so I felt like a caregiver, nurturer from a young age, and I still do to this day.
So you felt that it was easier to invest in them than to be vulnerable yourself?
Oh, definitely. Trying
Yeah.
to get them to be more vulnerable with themselves.
So would you say that you talked with your sister about like deeper emotional things, or?
It was too close to the bone. I talked to her about a bad haircut once, and she did not know how to handle it at all.
So you're like, okay, now I've calibrated what I can
Yeah.
talk with her about. Yeah.
Yeah. My sister is very, very beautiful, and everyone always makes sure to tell her that. My mom always says, and I don't fault her for this at all, but my mom always says, Chloe, your sister got the beauty in the family, and you got the brains. And part of that is very affirming, like, thanks, Mom, you're telling me that I'm smart. That means a lot. But part of that is, wow, Mom, that's rough.
My mom would say that, like, once my siblings started to come along, she barely had to be a mom anymore, which is not true. She was a lovely mom. She still is. But she would just say, like, I didn't have to be the mom anymore because you were, you know? You took care of all your siblings. So that was just in me from the beginning.
And so what would you say, like holistically, that your parents modeled for you as you were growing up? You know?
They modeled a strong sense of faithfulness. Yeah, faithfulness to God, faithfulness to one another. Very pure in heart, very simple.
Would you say that they modeled like an emotional vulnerability for you?
Oh, no, no.
Around the right people, I could be very loud. Like, I was the youngest in my family. I needed that attention. I was always vying for that attention. And like, you know, I grew up with 2 older brothers, and there just seemed to be this sort of like, emotions were sort of off limits. I think with my parents too. Like, it was this austere, you know, you keep closed and that sort of thing. And like with my dad, we would just listen to music when I was in the car with him. We wouldn't talk, we'd just listen to music because he's exceedingly introverted. And like, yeah, I guess I just felt really uncomfortable, like sharing my emotions.
Did that translate to you into feeling lonely much as a kid, or no?
I wouldn't say I felt lonely, no. Oh, another dimension I should probably introduce to the mix. Ever since I was 5 or 6, I've been absolutely obsessed with birds.
Birds, I love birds. Seriously, put a bird on it, right?
Portlandia.
Yeah.
I like if there wasn't anything going on, I would just grab my binoculars, run out into the woods, and watch birds.
Watch birds.
Yeah.
How did you get started with birding?
Yeah, when I was 6, my family went on vacation to Florida, and there was these little white sandpipers called sanderlings, and they run along the beach, like in and out of the waves, and I clicked on that. I was like, that is so cool.
That is totally my spirit animal.
Really?
Yeah, I've said that for years.
Cool.
Anyway. Sorry.
Anyway,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
at some point we went to this little gift shop, and there was this little like photo book of birds, and I flipped through it to the page for sanderlings, and like at that point I couldn't read very well, so I had my brothers and parents read it to me, like the page for sanderlings to me, so many times. I had it memorized. I could recite the whole thing.
Oh.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, that was definitely the first like event that sort of sparked it off for me, you know, and. Like, when I get a little older, I'd ride my bike. Like, on the weekends, I'd ride my bike 30 miles to the beach, 30 miles back, just looking for birds. Like, I go to parks around my house, like, every day before school.
Before school, you would?
Yeah.
Did you, like, document it? And
Yeah, I had all this camera gear. I took photos. I kept lists of all the birds I saw. I just, you know, I went after birds, like, full throttle.
I mean, that's not to say that every single thing we talked about in boarding school was like faith related or
Right.
super deep, you know? I mean, a lot of times when you're talking about the Bible, you're talking about like there's some verse in Leviticus that says like the fat belongs to the Lord. Like that's really weird. What does that mean, you know? I mean, we were definitely kids and definitely goofing off. But it also just wasn't unusual for us to go to breakfast and say like, hey, what did you read in your Bible this morning? Like that wasn't an unusual thing to hear. And now that I've left, it's like, holy cow, that's a super unusual thing to hear. Like, who just says that at breakfast? You know, like the only time you'd say that is if you go out for like a church breakfast. So, I mean, that was just a very different ethos and just a whole other way of looking at things that you're supposed to be interested in as a teenager.
Well, up until I started dating when I was 14, I felt very open and free with my parents, very free to like cry or be sad but then I think once I started dating, I just didn't feel that freedom. I think I started to, well, probably too because of kind of how I entered into dating, like wanting to date so badly and then, you know, getting pretty physical pretty fast. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't smoking, but I was doing a lot of making out and other stuff. So it just felt like there started to be walls that went up there of shame or guilt or fear of like, how do I enter into this? And there just wasn't really a whole lot of space for that, which is strange because around the table there'd be good conversation. You know, there'd be a lot of deep conversation about issues of faith and life, sort of existential conversations. But like when it came to like an intimacy or relationships or, you know, how far is too far, those kind of.
It was just maybe a little too vulnerable?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I was a guilty mess, but it didn't stop me, you know, after every makeout session or oral sex or whatever. It was just like, oh, we should not be doing this, but okay, see you Friday. You know, I didn't always want to do it, but, you know, it kept him happy. It kept him with me.
But I will say, probably one of the most soul-crushing feelings was to log on to Facebook and see that somebody else had seen a really cool bird that you'd never seen.
Wait, hold up, that was soul-crushing?
Oh, it was terrible.
Was there not any part of you that was like, good for you?
No.
You know, I'm glad that you saw that.
No. So yeah, there was.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't self-centered or anything, right?
So yeah, there was a lot of self-centeredness around Facebook. So I got rid of it.
So I left Pakistan junior year of high school, and I came to a public school here in the States, like 1,300 students, so pretty large. My grade, when I left Pakistan, was 16 people, and it was the largest class this school had for like 10 years probably.
So would you say that your extroversion stuck with you when you moved to the States then, or no?
It kind of got buried. I don't know, maybe it wasn't as resilient as I would have liked. I don't know, like I think immediately when I arrived, I was pretty excited to get to know people, but a lot of the cultural differences meant that like I didn't really know how to do that in an American setting. Like, so the way that I wanted to relate to other people was very different than the way that other people wanted to relate to me. Like, I was really excited to hear their stories, to understand who they were deeply, you know?
Yeah, and you came off as the like super intense, creepy kid.
Yeah, and
probably,
nobody
right?
was ready to go there. They're like, yeah, no, like, hold on, kid. But I mean, I think that's something that I've learned more and more about as I've learned about what it means to be a third culture kid, like what that means and how you view relationships and the way you view time, because growing up, time was always what I didn't have much of. So it's like, okay, you've got this time with this person, you're going to use it well.
Wait, why didn't you have time to spend with people?
Because they're always moving and leaving.
I'd say one of the most driving factors in my love of birds is just the change and like migration. Like birds are always moving, you know, and there's possibility for anything. Like, you know, birds have wings and they can show up anywhere. And like, but you can sort of predict it to a certain degree. Like it's late April and like migration's getting more underway.
Right.
Earlier in the week, I was just thinking pretty soon the blue-headed vireo is going to be coming through.
Wait, the blue-headed what?
The vireo.
The vireo?
Yeah.
No, I've never heard of that. But
Okay, and then I heard one when I was out in the preserve today, and it's just like, things like that are so cool.
like it's cool because it's predictable?
Yeah, and like just seeing the cycle come around again and seeing like birds up in the air and moving north to Canada or wherever, and like it just ignites this deep, like this wanderlust almost, and it's just so cool to see.
they're always moving. Like somebody's gonna leave next year. So, I mean, you have to make sure that the time that you spend with them, that you actually know them.
Right, that you're present there. Right?
Yeah, that it means something.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until coming to the States that I realized, like, okay, people do have to sort of put up shields, you know, because, I mean, not everybody is like these people that I've had the privilege to grow up with in Pakistan, who are so willing to respect these great pieces of who you are.
When I was younger, I was friends with everyone,
Okay.
friends with all of the people.
Yeah, so it was all about quantity over quality. It
Oh
sounds like.
yeah, back then for sure. But I definitely felt like I was always exchanging masks because I didn't have security in myself. Like I would be the uptight Christian girl at my mom's house, and then at my dad's house I'd be the fun, giggly, doesn't really care about anything, happy-go-lucky girl. And at school I would be this girl, and at church I'd be this other girl, and with these other friends I'd be this other girl. And it was very exhausting. I wasn't myself. I was who they wanted me to be, basically.
I wanted to say, let's sit down, let's have coffee, let's like talk about who we are, what our passions are, you know?
Yeah.
But these people I was meeting were like, hey, let's go watch a movie, let's go play a game, let's play soccer. And I mean, yeah, some of those things I love to do, but it just didn't feel fulfilling because I was expecting this other sort of relationship. But I mean, I think that's sometimes the impression that we get in this American Western culture, that if you just spend enough time with someone that you'll actually know them. And I don't think that automatically is true.
My sister went to Calvin.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's why I came here. I'm still kind of a very dependent person, but she came here, and then the weekend of my birthday, my freshman year, she left. She was failing every single one of her classes, but she was the only one I would really spend time with my freshman year. Like, I would spend the night on her room on Friday, and then she would come over and spend the night in my room the next night, and Sunday we'd go to church together, and Monday we'd eat dinner together. I mean, every single day. And so the silence and the lack of, she had a TV in her room, and the lack of TV and the lack of her music when I woke up in the morning was just what cemented in that I was alone at Calvin. I mean, every single person that I felt comfortable around or loved in any sense of the word love was at least 2 hours away from me from that point on. And I didn't have my car with me my freshman year either. I was very depressed. It was awful.
Did you try to seek help, like through Bruni Center or through?
Yeah, I did. I was very blessed I was not suicidal that year. But I had a newfound respect for people who had those thoughts because, I mean, there were so many days that I would wake up and I had nothing to look forward to. And I would drag myself out of bed and go to class because I knew that I had to and that I'd feel guilty if I didn't. And that was the only reason I kept going.
Was to not fail.
Right, right.
Has academics always been a strong point for you, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In high school, I didn't have to try. In college, Calvin is ridiculous.
like ridiculously hard or what?
Ridiculous in the regard that people who don't have to try, they don't have to try. So.
Oh, well, that's a good thing, right? I think like Calvin should use
Maybe.
that in their marketing, right? Anyway, so how long would you say that you've been in this place, right? This depressive sort of place?
I mean, I was depressed. I was mildly depressed until, I mean, a few weeks ago. So 2 years. I've been depressed for a long time, but at the beginning of this year, it got really bad, like scary bad, until a couple of weeks ago, I finally dragged myself to Bruni. So I'm doing a lot better now, but
Well, good. I mean, but you don't have to prove anything to me. I mean, of course, I'm concerned for your well-being.
Well, I mean, people like people who are happy. So if I say that I'm depressed, people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a connection killer,
Yeah.
right? So I know it feels like different things for different people, but what does depression feel like for you, would you say?
Oh, goodness. It is, I mean, it's a bottomless pit. It's a room with no windows and a door locked from the outside.
Ooh, a door that's locked from the outside? That's terrifying, right?
It is terrifying. And I mean, For me, it's not like lack of emotion because I've experienced that before and it's something totally different.
Right, right. That's like apathy, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you can't reach out to people because you feel like a burden and you don't want to weigh other people down. And it's just a downward spiral.
So about sophomore year at Calvin, I started to be more cognizant of my use of technology. I mean, and how much time it was taking up and how little it was actually doing to connect me like with people, you know?
So was it mostly Facebook or other stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so Facebook, just my computer in some way. And I mean, I was really trying to make it something that would keep me connected with people back in Pakistan. I mean, that was one of the main things I was struggling with on my computer at that time. And I say struggling with as if that's some horrible thing.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because I think, most guys would say that their main struggle with technology is porn, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so pornography has been part of the struggle as well. I saw pornography before I left Pakistan, like over breaks and stuff, but I wasn't addicted to it until I came to the States. That's when it really became an issue.
Right. So late in high school then, you're saying?
Yeah. Just, I mean, not being in a healthy place, like mentally and emotionally, just drove me there to porn and Facebook. And I don't know, like I've definitely realized when I'm in better relationships with the people around me, there's just a night and day difference. And I don't know, I guess there is sort of an interesting connection there in my story between Facebook and porn. I mean, not like a direct link, but similar reasons that drove me to each.
Yeah, like the desire for connection, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that how you'd put it?
Yeah, I think. And I mean, just the desire to not feel alone. And I guess like by doing something, I feel less alone. Because I'm not thinking about the fact that like, I'm just sitting here alone.
So how would you say you connect with silence now?
I still hate it. I hate it because it reminds me like, hey, I'm alone again. There is no one here right now. It's just me. And I don't like to be alone with my thoughts because the depression comes back in, reminding me that the reason why I struggle with bringing myself to counseling is because I don't want to admit to myself that I'm that low. And being alone and thinking about things in the silence reminds me that I actually am that low.
And is that shameful to you?
Yeah, because all over the Bible it says, well, not all over, but
Right.
It says God made you exactly how he wanted you. Why aren't you okay with it? Why do you not like straight hair? Why do you want curly hair? God gave you straight hair. He chose it for you.
Yeah, so how much of your depressiveness now is connected with body image stuff?
Currently, the majority. I have a disproportionate body image, and I definitely identify as a dependent person, which is why I'm not allowing myself to be in a relationship right now, because even though I want one, I know I'm not ready for one. Like, I would be too dependent and I would push the other person away and it would be too much for them to handle.
Yeah, interesting. Like if you were to break up, you would be devastated. Right?
Devastated, like scared for my life, devastated, yeah.
Tell me about your relationship at Calvin. How did that get started?
Well, sophomore year, we went on classic mission trip. Classic.
Yep.
Through Calvin during spring break, we all packed into a big van going to Texas.
Oh, seriously, that is where it happens, in those vans. Not kidding.
I mean, he was kind of a rock star type, which I'm so attracted to. He was just like, everybody loved him. Everyone was drawn to him. He loved talking about Jesus, which I'm so attracted to, especially since I was a public school girl my whole life. So yeah, 2 years passed and we were getting into our senior year. We were like, yep. We love each other. We're attracted to each other. We love the Lord. Like, this would be the next step for us. We'll go on and do ministry together.
Right, be a power couple, right?
Yeah, powerhouse, rock star couple, great. And we got engaged senior year.
So you're a senior and about to graduate, right?
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
Hell yes.
Okay. What are you most nervous about, would you say?
I'd say the thing I'm most nervous about is, and this is another chapter we're opening up here.
Okay.
Is I'm sort of going through a breakup right now.
Sort of, you said?
Yeah. So we're on a break right now, which I guess is different than breaking up. And like, so originally the plan had been to marry her, and you know, she's going to school in Vermont, so I was like, well, I'll just move to Vermont and we'll make this work. And it's looking like that's not going to happen. We've been together for 3.5 years. She was a birder too.
Oh, did you go birding together?
Well, all the time.
Yeah.
Like, we met when we were 16, so we've been friends for several years. And drawing it all together, I'd say that one of the reasons we may be breaking up might be my trouble with vulnerability. It's really hard. It's still not easy. Yeah, it's almost, I don't know, it's almost as if like embarrassment, like emotions, or like, I don't know. So there's that. And
Wait,
then
what was that? What was in that?
this?
Yeah, and
Just a shriveling up sort of motion.
yeah, right. But why? What was behind that?
I've been thinking about this lately, and I guess, I don't know, it just seems like I'm burdening people and just like vomiting all this crap all over them. And like, I feel like I've gotten better at feeling and sharing, like, all right, I can share this. This isn't something I have to keep in with myself. And it just doesn't feel entirely natural yet, though. And I guess there's a lot of things that I just felt uncomfortable sharing with her, and that hurt her a lot.
So there started to be cracks in the relationship, especially after we got engaged. And then it kind of matched my high school relationship, which was with a non-Christian. And I think I just had a hard time wrapping my mind around, like, I can get in bed with this non-Christian guy in high school and give him blowjobs, and I can do the same with this Christian guy in college. It was just like, darn it. You know, I wanted this one to be different.
Right.
I wanted it to be healthier, whatever that means, and it wasn't. So for a while I'd been struggling with, you know, I feel dirty, I feel like a whore, like, what are we doing?
Right. So most of the tension was about sexual stuff, was it?
Yeah, well, and at that time I felt very jealous. Well, he would make me feel like that in that sense that, well, his 3 best friends were women, which I think I'd be okay with even today, but just the way he treated me in that, the way he sort of framed that, did not set it up in a very safe or inclusive way. So I always felt on the outside of that. Once he was even like, you know, this is just the way it's gonna be. You're gonna have to deal with it if you're in a relationship with me.
Ugh, no.
So yeah, and yet a lot of my good guy friends, he was not okay with. So I just felt like I was losing my voice a lot in that. And I consider now, looking back years later, that there was just sort of a supernatural rumbling in me, like deep in my soul. Like, I do love this guy, I really do, but something in this relationship is not right, you know? I felt like something was off center, like I was not myself anymore. And you know, we had no courage or self-control or like ability to do this very well. And then communication started to absolutely break down. Like, it got pretty vicious. It got to the point where, like, I did not feel safe or confident enough to go over to his apartment or for him to come to my place. And it was just like, I don't want to be married like this. Like, it's not going to get better with marriage. It's going to be similar to this. And just any sort of foundation that we thought we had was just crumbling. Like, it was really quick. So senior year, I broke up with him because I just felt like it wasn't good, like it wasn't heading in a good direction.
I think a large part of it is, so we were actually engaged for several months, and I'd been having these feelings like, oh crap, do I really want to get married? And
Yeah, big questions, right?
yeah, and like, I just had trouble sharing that with her, because I guess, like, for one thing, I don't want to scare you away, and for another thing, like, I just wasn't sure if those feelings were there to stick. Like, I don't want to just like dump this news on you and have it be a feeling that I'm feeling for like 3 days or a week. And like, yeah, it just was messy, that coming out.
But you did eventually say that to her, right?
Yeah, and you know, we sort of got over it, you know, and like talked it through, but there was damage done, and I think that's ultimately led to our current situation.
So did you still have like a post-college game plan or no?
Oh no, I had to rethink everything.
Yeah, because you had planned to
Move to Virginia with him and be Christian superstars.
So where did that leave you then?
I was pretty much a mess.
Yeah.
Really, it left me going back to my family, you know, in AK Rowdy, because I just needed time to heal from that mess, from just the mess of it. Like, it felt maybe toxic at times, and you got to kind of detox from those things, and that takes time.
So how did you end up staying at Calvin, you know, after your sister failed out and left and your depression got worse? And
Yeah, it was my Barnabas my freshman year, for sure. Heather. I was actually a Barnabas because of her my sophomore year, because I saw how much she helped me, and I wanted to help other people in that way if they needed it.
So when you say that she helped you, you mean she helped alleviate the depression, right? Because the depression was always there?
Right,
Yeah.
correct. So I would drag myself to her room every single day and collapse onto her futon sobbing in her lap. And she would read me Bible verses, or she would cover me with a blanket and just let me sit there and cry, or tell me stories, or distract me, or pray over me. I mean, she is what got me through my freshman year without a doubt.
And how did you first meet her? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I was trying to think of that. I believe it was a Bible study, and I think she may have smiled at me and made eye contact with me a couple of times. It was the first person that, well, because I was very shy. Yep, I'll get into that more later.
Oh, okay.
I've been very shy since junior year of high school. But anyway, she was the first person to reach out to me in that way, because I was such a recluse after my sister left. So I think it was that, and then I think I went into her room to ask her a biblical question one day and sort of ended up pouring out my life onto her table. But she is, though, literally, I think, yeah, 100% is my favorite person on the entire planet. Like, she's the best person that I know.
So my sophomore year, I had become a Barnabas, and I basically said, like, all right, God, I'll be a Barnabas, like I'll go wherever they need a Barnabas, and that was just this new start that was completely different, and all of a sudden, I mean, the dorm leadership just welcomed me. Like, I was super excited, I was super like back in extroversion, like this is my zone, you know, I love this, like WeHaul, moving, oh, like, I don't know, it was wonderful. I loved it. I mean, I didn't know anybody in the dorm before I moved, maybe like 1, 2 people. So I mean, it was just great. Like all of a sudden I felt like I have a community, like I have people around me. And the Barnabas team really helped me start to break down a lot of prejudices and judgments that I'd been building up since high school. Like the kind of ideas that Americans are shallow and unwilling to engage in deep conversation. Because like, they were vulnerable, and they took that risk. I mean, one of the first things that we did as a group was to share our life stories, and it was one of the first times that I'd had the opportunity to hear Americans who hadn't lived anywhere else, to hear their life stories and like the ugly and vulnerable parts of it. And it was one of the first times that I'd had those Americans listen to mine, not as like, oh, this is just some missionary kid up front, like, talking about being a missionary kid and what God has done, but I mean, just talking about him and his life and what he's been through. And so that really shifted a lot, and it just broke down a ton of walls, because all of a sudden it's just like, I'm not alone.
I think my situation is a little bit strange because, like, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm graduating and I'm not really from the Grand Rapids area, and like, there's not really a ton of reasons for me to stick here. Like, I don't really have a home. Like, I lived in California for 3 years with my family before coming to Calvin, but those were 3 pretty lonely years. California doesn't have much for me. And I don't really have a home default to go back to. Like, I'm not getting married and moving to Vermont, so I don't have that to look forward to. It's just kind of like, well, crap, what do I do now?
The idea of staying put in one place for a really long time kind of freaks me out.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
mean, there are places that I circle back to a lot. Like, if you think about a boomerang, I liken it to that. Like, I boomerang out and come back, and I boomerang out and come back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've done that quite a few times with Akron, Ohio since graduating, and wow, I've done that 3 times now with Grand Rapids.
So when did you start to think of yourself as like
A
a
gypsy for Jesus. Well, a couple years after graduating, I was on the road with a family in RVs. They were friends of friends. And yeah, we were literally like on the road, like stopping in people's houses, staying in hotels every 2 or 3 nights for 4 months. It was like
gosh.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I nannied and I taught their kids on the RV. And they have this great ministry. Like they traveled all over the nation, stopping at high schools, and you know, they just talk about like making positive life choices, and people would just flock to them after their talks. But anyway, I just remember during that whole RV time, Bonnie, the mother, she was just such a great mentor to me without me even having to like ask for it. She just really spoke, you know, a lot of truth into my life, and she taught me a lot about prayer and just being a woman in leadership, like really lovely, but really empowering too, about like having a voice, you know. And so I just remember one night we'd stopped in some RV park in, I don't know, Alabama somewhere, you know, stop for the overnight, hitch up your stuff, unload your tank.
Your poop tank,
Your
right?
poop tank.
Yeah.
And yeah, just have an inexpensive place to be for the night. And I remember we got to go for a walk, you know, just her and I, and it was so nice. And I remember she said to me, like, you're meant for this life. And I think I started to interpret that for myself, how I wanted to. And like what I thought she meant, like being on the road. And that just resonated, like so deeply resonated with me of like, yeah, I can do this. I can be on the road, going from place to place and offering love and support to people along the way, and reminding people of their worth and value, and helping to bring healing and reconciliation, and just going from place to place and city to city to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And so do you hope that that's what your future will be too?
Yeah, I think so. But I have a gift in my family, and that never, ever once have they ever been like, well, but when are you going to get married, though? Like, okay, it's been long enough. Like, when's it coming?
Yeah.
I just think there's so many people who are single or who are struggling in singleness who have those outside voices always like
shaming them, really,
yeah,
right?
or like putting a spotlight on it, like, when are you gonna give me grandbabies? Or like literally like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong with you? Are you not dating anyone yet? Oh my goodness, how is that helpful? How is that honoring to people? That's just like, what in the world are we doing?